Okay. So, how are we feeling about Dan Quinn now? I know a lot of you guys weren't that excited about him to begin with, but how do we feel after that game? And more importantly, how do the Seahawks feel about Dan Quinn after that performance? Game just ended a few minutes ago, and what happened out there was so monumental that I feel like I got to make a video about it, even though theoretically it doesn't really have anything to do with the Seahawks. I feel like it does. Like Dan Quinn's defense just got boat raced at home where they have won, what was it, 16 straight games by an offense that, it's a good offense, but it's a quarterback playing his first ever career postseason game. It's not an elite offense. It's a team that is just happy to be in the playoffs, that barely got in, that got in literally at the very tail end of their Week 18 game, and Dan Quinn just lays down and lets them have it. I I'm speechless. And it's not like I was a huge Dan Quinn supporter. I was very much kind of in the middle on Dan Quinn. I've said all along, even when Dan Quinn was in a good position, which by which I mean before today, we can do better. But man, we can do better. My God, we better be able to do better than that. And I'm not the kind of guy who likes to overreact too much to one game, but you got to admit that game was so bad, it's hard not to react to it in some way. Romeo Dobbs was playing like he was invisible. Like the Cowboys defense could not see him. They couldn't stop the run at all. They had multiple explosive plays out of their passing attack. No sacks on Jordan Love. With that kind of talent they have on defense, shouldn't ever happen. So just first of all, that's kind of the first thing I want to express in this video. Where do we go from here now with Dan Quinn, supposedly the clubhouse favorite to be the Seattle Seahawks' next head coach? And is that even possible after this game? Are people going to look at this game and go, wait a minute, this guy sucks? And again, I'm not here to overreact after one game, but you got to admit, Dallas's defense has had problems against most of the elite offenses they played this year. San Fran roasted them. Buffalo roasted them. I guess they did good against Miami. Even Seattle roasted them. And is Miami's offense even that good at this point? Maybe not. So, I'm all about looking at a body of work, but there's also some context in there, and the context might be Dallas can't handle a real offense. And don't get me wrong, two of those touchdowns by Dallas were on the offense, the turnovers. They had a pick six. They had another touchdown that came on a possession that started in the red zone. So you could cut that down to like 34 points allowed. That's still awful. This Packers offense is nowhere near good enough to justify giving up 34 points at home when you have what is supposed to be an elite defense. So I think that the Dan Quinn stuff is going to be significantly chilled out after that one. I think the Dan Quinn stuff, it's you just gotta pull him down a little bit. If you're John Schneider, if you're Jody Allen, if you're Burt Cold, if you're anybody within that organization that is making this head coaching decision, how can you not look at this game and say, wait a minute here, what are we dealing with Dan Quinn? Because he's got more talent in Dallas than he's going to have in Seattle, at least initially. So, again, I'm not trying to take anything away from the game or the 3 seasons in totality that Dan Quinn had, which were very impressive, but who boy. This is going to be interesting, the discourse. But here's the thing that'll really get you going if you're a Seahawks fan. Here's the scenario that needs to be discussed for at least a little bit here, and I'm going to freak people out here, but I'm sorry, it's got to be said. So Mike McCarthy's going to get fired tomorrow. I don't see any way around it. Like, McCarthy's gone. If he's not gone, then Jerry Jones is completely in the tucking it between his legs era of his owning career. Just completely giving up. And first of all, what happens to Dan Quinn then? Does he just get fired or let go? Or does he get promoted After this game, how can you promote him? How can you promote anyone? How do you not just go get Bill Belichick? How do you not just go get Jim Harbaugh and make whatever concessions you need to make? But if Dan Quinn is promoted in Dallas, would he rather take the Dallas job or the Seattle job? It is said by some people that the reason why Dan Quinn stayed as the Dallas defensive coordinator last year was because he was waiting for the Seattle job to open up and didn't want any other job. So there are some interesting angles here, but here's the thing that'll really freak everybody out, and I'm going to go ahead and lay it down. I don't think you guys are ready for this one. Mike McCarthy gets fired. Dan Quinn gets promoted. Mike McCarthy comes to coach the Seattle Seahawks. Like, I'm sorry to be the guy who says it because I know everyone's going to just die. But there is a connection between McCarthy and Schneider going back to Green Bay. Those guys probably have a good relationship. And while McCarthy obviously failed in Dallas, it's going to be looked at as a failure with a big asterisk because of all the winning he did do. He had 3 straight seasons of 12-5. Look what he did with Dak Prescott. Look what he did offensively without necessarily the good talent, but a 4th-round quarterback. Didn't really have a good running back that whole time because Tony Pollard's whatever and Zeke was washed up. So Mike McCarthy actually did have a lot of success in Dallas. He was way better than Jason Garrett. He built some really impressive things in terms of culture there, I think, and was able to get the team to 12 wins in 3 straight seasons. So that's on the table, I think, and I hate to say it because, yeah, I wouldn't be excited about it either because I think a big part of what happened today was also on Mike McCarthy, and just in general, I feel like there's they're not a very low ceiling, but a lower ceiling with McCarthy. I guess I'd rather have him than Carroll. I would still rather have Dan Quinn than Carroll, but man, you got to do better, right? You've got one of the wealthiest ownership groups in the league. You got to do better than what we're seeing from these guys. So I don't know. How has your perception changed? And how scared are you of Mike McCarthy, Seattle Seahawks head coach? Hopefully the fact that he's been fired, twice in the last 6 years is a deterrent. Like, that's hard evidence that he's just not all that. Like, if you get fired twice in 6 seasons, and in the case of the Green Bay firing, a replacement comes in and immediately puts you to shame, that should mean something. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But the more realistic question right now concerns Dan Quinn. Do we want him? Is he still good? What's your perception of him as a head coaching candidate? I mean, it's tough right now, but that game shook me. I already wasn't in love with the Dan Quinn idea, but that game shook me from an already pretty shaken place. All right, I'll see you guys later. Just want to kind of feel out how people are thinking about this situation right now, because Dan Quinn just face vaulted, Mike McCarthy just face vaulted, and they could both be out. Dan Quinn could be promoted. Dan Quinn could be the one who gets fired, and Mike McCarthy could stay, I guess. Suddenly, everything seems possible. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Figure that one out, guys. Figure that one out. 34 points allowed on defense. 400 yards plus of offense. No turnovers, no sacks. How excited are we about the potential of Dan Quinn as a head coach right now? See you guys later.